we rolled up to this guy's house, trespassed on his lawn, where we have Raina, who was an infant whose parents died and was awarded custody to Flint, who raised her from child to then love her romantically, which is weird and gross. But if it's not a person, it's a real doll. What the fuck is this episode, Allie?
I don't know.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
I'm Captain James Kirk. It's Spock.
Your move, Captain. Jim Kirk of the Enterprise.
What's going on? I'm James Kirk. These people are my friend and my shipmate. Leave my crew alone.
Out of the question.
How about that?
James Kirk.
It fits like a glove, Captain.
Oh, the bonehead ideas.
Gentlemen, I'm Captain James Kirk. Get out of my chair. Get out of it now.
My greetings and felicitations, Captain. So good of you and your officers to, drop in. Absolutely smashing.
Nuchnech, and welcome to Humanist Trek. It's a Star Trek podcast in English, not Klingon, about the humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
And I'm Allie Ashmead.
Allie, we got some subspace messages. It's time to open the hailing frequencies.
Oh, goody. Okay.
Subspace message from Starfleet. Switching to speaker.
Our first subspace message comes to us from new ensign Stefan, who's on our Patreon. Hi, Sarah and Allie. In episode 75, you asked about what galactic south could mean. Does the galaxy have a south?
Oh, I'm excited to hear this.
By the conventions used by astronomers, yes, there is a galactic North Pole and galactic South Pole. If you picture the typical overhead view of our galaxy with the spiral arms going out counterclockwise, north is toward the camera. This means the galaxy is fairly flat in the north-south direction and large in the other directions.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you define a coordinate system for the galaxy? Our current system defines the origin 0, 0, 0, X, Y, Z as our sun.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense for us because all of our observations are from Earth. I imagine in the early days of human exploration depicted in Enterprise, we would have clung to this convention as our first colonies would be thought of in terms of their position relative to Earth. Clearly, the most logical origin for a galactic coordinate system is the center of the galaxy, not our sun or Earth. But that doesn't really solve the problem. You still need to choose some other point of reference for latitude and longitude. Today, we can all agree where the equator and poles are on the Earth, but some place has to be 0 longitude.
Mm-hmm.
That place is Greenwich, England, for reasons that are tied up in history, science, politics, trade, and colonialism. The same negotiation would have to occur at the founding of the Federation. Every species would have their own system that they thought was best.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm guessing we ended up with the Vulcan system. It would be the most logical. With the least species-centered bias, although it is impossible to remove all bias from this decision. The NX-01 Enterprise was relying on Vulcan star charts, so they're probably already used to it. If nothing else, the Vulcans would have the mental fortitude to continue to argue their case until everyone else relents. Your impromptu science correspondent, Stefan.
Thank you, Stefan.
That was great.
Absolutely. Adore it. I adore Stefan.
I
Thank
totally do too, and I love the call that it's probably the Vulcans system that we ended up with because they would have come to the most logical conclusion and then everyone else adopted it.
And it just makes sense for Star Trek canon. It
Mhm,
does. Well,
mhm.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. We have another subspace communication. This one comes to us from our patron, Lieutenant Commander Anders, who also chimes in on the north-south question.
Thank you, guys. That's awesome.
Anders says, although it makes sense that the galaxy has southern and northern halves, I suppose it was a reference to U.S. political and historical geography as much as anything else. Otherwise, why not the usual sectors and quadrants? Meant to include this before, but one takeaway from the TOS rewatch has been how much they lean on ancient Rome and Greece. He says Helen of Troy, was the latest, but I did find one thing interesting when I looked up the story. So this was the episode about we're taking this woman to be married to the opposing party,
The leader
whatever.
just to try to stop the war.
Yeah. In the Homeric version, Helen doesn't get a voice in this at all, as she is shunted from one marriage to another. It's left vague as to whether she is raped or goes to Troy willingly, and then when she goes back to Greece, it's unclear whether that's for the love of her original husband or for diplomatic requirements. So maybe by putting her at the center, it was an improvement.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Great job, all of you, Anders. Thank you, Anders.
Thanks, Anders. And sadly, the way that the Helen of Troyes ended, she still didn't get a choice.
Right.
She ended up having to go marry that leader.
Yeah.
But at least she did fall in love with Kirk, I guess. But in the end, she didn't get a choice. But she was definitely a strong-willed. I loved that she wasn't just a shrinking violet, though.
Speaking of shrinking violets becoming strong women, let's get into Star Trek: The Original Series, Season 19, Requiem for Methuselah.
Sir, contact with an object. It's moving toward us. No visual contact yet.
Deflectors, full intensity.
Methuselah, yes, Captain. Anything on your scanners?
It's coming at light speed.
Collision course. Visual contact.
Anything, over?
All wavelengths dominated by ionization effects, sir.
All engines full stop.
The Enterprise is in the middle of a Rigelian fever epidemic. 3 dead crewmen and 23 others sick so far, and in order to combat this illness, McCoy's going to need everybody to stay in their quarters and wear masks, but the Federation just elected a new president who thinks it's just another flu, and he mocks the scientists and suggests they all shove a turkey baster full of bleach up their asses instead. Wait, I think I'm getting mixed. I'm getting mixed up.
I think you're getting mixed up with reality versus Star Trek.
Yeah. McCoy needs large quantities of Ritalin, not to be confused with, and with which my word processor kept trying to autocorrect, Ritalin.
Yes, mine too. Yeah, Ritalin. And not to be confused with hydrochloroquine either.
So this horse pill, this horse dewormer, Ritalin, is it's the only known antidote to this disease. And luckily, wouldn't you know it, how common is this stuff in the universe? Wouldn't you know it, sensors have picked up Ritalin on a planet nearby in the Omega system, which Shatner pronounces Omega.
I did notice that.
That was weird.
Why is it not Omega?
I don't know. So KSM beamed down to planet Pink soundstage walls, where the foam rock playset has been set up again.
Hey, it's foam rock playset number, 20, 50, right. Who knows? Anyway, they've beamed down to this planet, and McCoy reports that there's a large deposit off in the distance somewhere. So he's got to collect it. He's got 4 hours to process it, because otherwise the epidemic is going to be irreversible. Curiously,
Spock picks up a life sign on his tricorder that once again didn't register on the ship's sensors.
Exactly. The ship sensors seem to suck, and then his handheld seems to do a lot better, but maybe because they're down there. But yeah, once again.
Right. Those magic MacGuffin tools work when they need them and don't work when they need them not to work. Yeah.
Right.
This life sign that they've picked up is human. And as they head off to find the Ritalin, a floating droid-looking device comes up from behind and starts licking shots at them.
I think, is this the thing that was used to be Nomad and they reused it?
Yes, that was our question for this episode, right?
Yep. Yeah, but I hadn't really watched it yet.
No, so. I hadn't either.
Now
This is totally reused Nomad parts for sure.
Yeah, little floaty metal ball with some lights and phasers.
So this mini Nomad licks off a couple of shots, and they try to fire back, but their heaters are inoperative. And suddenly we hear a voice off camera, "Do not kill." There was some fun camera work here that I noticed and appreciated. So far, Mini Nomad has been floating through the air on guide wires, probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they switch and mount it onto the camera dolly somehow, so that when the camera pulls back, it pulls back the mini nomad at the same like rate, the same speed. I appreciated that. Something that I noticed that I liked.
Something that cracked me up so hard in this scene is when nomads, every time he shot at KSM, they were hardly even in a hurry to get out of the way. And just as an afterthought, they're like, oh shoot, we better run. 3 times nomad shot at them. I'm like, they're just in no hurry at all. They could not give a fuck.
So this gray-haired man appears, and Kirk starts to introduce himself, but the old man already knows who he is. And Kirk's like, okay, well, then you probably know why we're here, and you know that we come in peace or whatever, and we just need to get some Ritalin or people are going to die. And Kirk threatens to take the Ritalin by force if necessary. And the old man claims he has the power to force them to leave or to kill them.
And he does say, you will leave my planet.
Yeah, this dude is like, my name is Flint, get off my lawn.
Exactly. And Kirk is like, what, your planet? And he talks about, he waxes poetic about this is his retreat from all the unpleasantness of Earth and the company of people. I don't know. I kind of like this guy because I get it.
Oh,
you know,
this is me.
Me too. I'm a hermit. I do like people, but I'd rather not. I'd just rather not.
Yeah. If I became independently wealthy such that I would not have to work the rest of my life, I would build a cabin in the mountains and y'all would never see me again. I would be just like this dude.
I kind of would too, except without the, well, you'll see.
Okay.
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
If you had enough money.
Flint is played by James Daly, like a lot of actors at the time. He comes from the stage. I read that he put his acting career on hold to serve in the military during World War II and served in all 3 branches.
What?
Which is the thing you can do, I guess.
I didn't know
Yeah.
How? That's amazing. That's admirable, I guess.
He did a lot of stuff in the 50s and 60s that I'd never heard of. Appearances in The Twilight Zone, 12 O'Clock High, Gunsmoke, Mission Impossible, Planet of the Apes. Kirk whips out his StarTAC and calls up Scotty to lock phasers onto their position. And he's like, look, if you try anything, then it won't just be us dead. It'll be all of us dead. And then my crew's going to come down here and take the Ritalin anyway. So this is like power edging each other.
Totally. And Flynn is like, oh, an interesting test of power. Your big force is against mine.
This theme comes back throughout the episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But Spock basically pulls the, do you want to fuck around and find out?
Yeah.
Because he says, Mr. Flint, unless you're certain, I would suggest you refrain from a most useless experiment.
So they try to make their case. Like, this isn't going to take long. And besides, have you even seen what Rigelian fever does? People die in a day. It's like the bubonic plague or something. And that triggers something in Flint. He kind of closes his eyes as if he's remembering something. And when he opens them again, he's got this far off look as he talks about Constantinople, summer of 1334. He's like, picture it, Sicily.
I thought for a minute when he closed his eyes, for a moment, I'm like, is he a robot?
Yes.
Because
is he accessing a database or something? Yeah.
But then as he's talking about Constantinople, he just looks really, really sad because he's like, he's doing that whole picture it, And Spock asks him if he's a student of history, and he says, I am.
The way he talked about this gave me like, oh, is this another Greek god that once visited Earth kind of thing? Vibes. I got that again.
I didn't. And I thought, okay, he's some sort of android. But
that was my first thought. But then the way he talked about it, it was such a personal, like relating a personal experience as if he had lived through it himself.
Mm.
And yeah, he calls the Enterprise a plague ship and gives them 2 hours. And then you got to get out. And he says, M4, the mini nomad, will collect the Ritalin for you. And off it goes while Flint leads them to his home.
He says, yeah, I will offer you more comfortable surroundings. So yeah, now he wants to be friendly. Nothing like a little, I'm going to kill us all to inspire some hospitality.
Right?
Off they go. They show like this backdrop of this massive fucking palace / castle.
Was that a remastered image?
I don't know. It's something like out of Game of Thrones. And I swear though, we've seen it before. It does look familiar.
Flint's home is a large palatial home, complete with observation tower. Originally, Flint's home was represented by a reuse of the matte painting of Rigel 7 from The Cage. You called it. Good one, Allie.
I guess I know I've seen that.
Good one.
Rigel 7. Okay.
Wow. So inside, we learn that this planet has screens that trick their sensors into thinking that it's lifeless. And Flint says he's here alone, except for M4, who serves a number of functions.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all pretty impressed with this home. McCoy starts remarking on a collection of rare books, and the camera cuts to what must be like the first ever flat screen TV sitting on a little side table. And then we see a young blonde woman in a glittery silvery dress watching this happen on the TV.
She's watching the latest episode of Star Trek, the original series. And they're just fawning over all of his items, lithographs by Tyrannulus and rare books.
We see Flint offer them brandy and excuse himself for a moment. And alone, KSM discussed the trustworthiness of Flint and the timeline again on refining Ritalin into medicine. And now Spock's fanboying. He's like, this rare collection of art. This is like Da Vinci stuff. This is legit.
Yeah, like legit actual works of Da Vinci.
Fast cut to that woman now talking to Flint. And this is Raina, played by Louise Sorel, who you'll know.
I did recognize her. I'm like, I know her. And of course, she played on a lot of other things, but the two things that I knew her from were the soaps. Because back in the 80s, I watched a lot of, I was like 10. I mean, but that's what we did. We watched soap operas, Santa Barbara, and then also Days of Our Lives, I think.
Alamein Kyriakis Demera. There were several different last names. So, it's a soap opera. She's been married to all of them. Vivian Alamein Kyriakis Demera. On Days of Our Lives, Vivian, yeah. And then Route 66, Bonanza, The Flying Nun, Hawaii Five-0, Kojak, Charlie's Angels. More recent stuff like the soaps.
Yep, she's still alive.
Law and Order and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which
wow.
is interesting. I didn't realize.
Didn't know that either.
Raina is very interested in meeting these men, especially the Vulcan, whom she could talk about subdimensional physics with. But
yeah, because that's what you want to talk about, know?
Yeah, it's what she wants to talk about.
I get the impression that she's not seen anyone else but him.
Yes.
But Flint in a really long time.
Yeah. Or ever. She's never met another person other than him, is my understanding. Flint describes these men as selfish, brutal people, a part of the human community which he rejected and which he has been trying to shield her from. He's an isolationist. This is the guy. The people from the outside are bad, and we got to protect you from them.
Living off the grid. Yep.
He nearly kisses her, but she is not into that. And he kind of pulls back. And it didn't click to me at the moment, but it did later. Why she was unemotional about his effort to kiss her.
Right. He asks her if she'd been lonely, and this is what told me I knew that she wasn't, on the up and up, because she says, what is loneliness? Because if you don't know what that is as a human, then maybe you're not human. I don't know. But he describes loneliness as a thirst, a flower dying in the desert.
I guess I only read that as her being childlike, youthful and not aware of, a lot of things. It didn't click to me then that we were dealing with maybe not a human. Anyway, back in the main room, Spock's tricordering around while McCoy's pouring out Saurian brandy, and he offers one to Kirk, but he says to Spock, "Oh, I know you won't have one. Heaven forbid those mathematically perfect brainwaves be corrupted by this all too human vice." And Spock's like, "Actually, I'll take a double."
Both McCoy and Kirk are a bit shocked at his agreement to have some brandy. And then, of course, McCoy takes this opportunity, or chooses this moment, rather, to say something biggity about how alcohol affects his green blood. I'm like, really?
Yep.
Just stop.
Yeah. And I believe I read something about how this is a contradiction in universe canon about how Vulcans process alcohol, because in one of the movies, was it in Star Trek 6, I believe it was, when they're doing like diplomacy with the Klingons, remember? And they all sit down at the table or whatever. I think they said something about how Vulcans aren't affected by alcohol at all. Like it just doesn't bother them.
Right. And also in Strange New Worlds, when Spock had sort of like an accident where the aliens that they encountered tried to remake him, and they took away his Vulcan part.
Yes.
And so then he got drunk for the first time, and because he was not able to get drunk before.
Yeah. So this was changed. This was. We changed this later. Spock's like, I can handle my liquor, but if I seem distracted, it's because I'm very close to experiencing a human emotion. Envy. Again, this is all these paintings, and he's just envious of this collection. He's tricordered them, and none of them has ever been cataloged, meaning that these are priceless, unknown works, never revealed to the public.
And they're authentic. I didn't realize he had such a
knowledge of
passion for some of the classics, like the art in those eras. So it's just very interesting how starstruck he is about all of it.
Mm-hmm. So his tricorder scans reveal them to be authentic down to the brushstroke and use of materials, but the materials themselves are contemporary. So there's something fishy going on here. Like, is this real? Is this an illusion? I thought, is this another fucking Trelane?
I mean, so this dude, Flint, he's walking around in those fancy robes. I mean, in a castle. It was exact Trelane vibe.
I got a lot of that in this episode, yeah. Kirk tells Spock to tricorder Flint at the next opportunity, see if he really is human. And then he calls up Scotty to hit the old Encyclopedia Britannicas and see what he can find out about Flint and this planet.
I think this is the first time that they mentioned the name of the planet. It's called Holberg 917G.
Yeah.
No wonder they didn't mention it. But yeah, so Scotty agrees to take a look, and they enjoy their brandy, and little M4 comes gliding in and plops a plastic sandwich bag of crisps. It's just like a little Ziploc sandwich bag.
M4's like, I got the stuff. Do you have the money?
So McCoy confirms it's ready to be processed into antitoxin, and they're going to beam it up to the ship to get started. But Flint's like, no, wait, M4 can do it. M4 can prepare the Ritalin quickly in his laboratory. So McCoy's like, well, I'm going to supervise that, because obviously he doesn't trust them.
Another Trelane moment for me. Flint invites them all to dinner, but they're like, we have a whole epidemic going on back at home, and so we kind of need to TikTok here. Let's get going.
Yeah.
But Flint insists he wants to make amends for being kind of a grumpy old man, yelling them to get off his lawn. And in walks Raina.
Oh my.
Cue the saxophone music.
Flint introduces Raina and clarifies that earlier when he said he lived alone, I wasn't lying. What I meant was alone with my family. The lying liar.
The lying liar.
Then he introduces the Starfleets, and throughout this, Kirk just looks totally taken aback at her beauty. Kirk's got the look on his face like Scotty had in the last episode. Yeah. All doe-eyed and shit. She tells Spock she'd like to talk about field density and its relationship to gravity phenomena.
I bet she does. But Spock is like, indeed. Yeah, I want to talk about that too. It's an interest of mine. And then he introduces her to Captain Kirk, and he explains, or this is what he gives as the explanation for her background, is that her parents were killed in an accident while they were working for him, and then they placed her as an infant in his custody. So he's raised and educated her. But when he said that, I'm like, well, why did you fucking try to kiss her on the mouth?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it
I
a
was like,
little weird to fall in love with someone you basically raised like your own child? Isn't
yeah.
it? I'm over here like, Raina, blink 3 times if you need help.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
no.
Awkward.
But of course, they didn't see that, so we saw it.
So he raised her and educated her. In fact, she has the equivalent of 17 university degrees in the sciences and arts.
That was also another flag for me. I'm like, no way would a human be. No.
He explains that he's also taught her that there's more than book smarts, of course. But the book learning must come first. Otherwise, you make a lot of mistakes and waste a bunch of time. And McCoy's like, oh, at her age, I made a lot of mistakes, a lot of fun mistakes, and it didn't hurt me none.
Don't take advice from McCoy.
Right. Name 3 diseases you've cured.
Exactly. McCoy says, of course, another sort of patronizing, sort of sexist thing. He says, I have to admit that she's the farthest thing from a bookworm that he's ever seen, which there's that like unspoken assumption that because she's beautiful, she couldn't possibly be smart.
Yep. Flint sends McCoy off with the robot to the lab and then offers Kirk and Spock a choice of chess, billiards, or conversation. And Kirk steps closer to Raina and chooses all 3.
M4 heads off to the lab and McCoy follows, but M4 disappears through some door in the lab and you can kind of see him behind it behind the screen doing some stuff. And then McCoy sees these, what I think would look like to me are colored squeeze bottles of Kool-Aid on the desk.
Welcome to Prop Talk with Allie and Sarah.
There's squeeze bottles of Kool-Aid.
This is some dollar store squeeze bottles.
Oh, 100%. And there's like lime flavored, there's cherry, and there's citrus, and then blue raspberry.
And you put that on your snow cone.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Meanwhile, Raina is showing Kirk how to play billiards, and she seems pretty skilled. And this was a role reversal, right? So normally they have the man teaching the little lady how to play her game, and you know,
and
he has his hands wrapped around her, and but she was doing that to Kirk this time.
And he didn't mind it at all.
Oh, no. Kirk pushes back on Flint's idea of the savagery of Earth. This is a topic we talk about all the time in Star Trek. Yeah. Asks how long ago it was he visited, and Flint's like, well, I'm sure you're going to tell me it's changed since the last time I was there, but it hasn't. Look at that starship of yours, bristling with weapons, out here colonizing and exploiting and destroying shit if you have to.
Is he wrong?
Nope.
I mean, nope. But Kirk is like, our missions are peaceful or whatever. And our weapons are I promise, they're only defensive. And if they were barbarians, they would not have asked for the Rytal and they would have just taken it. But you're the one who fucking started shooting and asking questions later.
This is the point in the episode where my brain started turning to mush, and I don't know if it's just, I think I texted you. I don't know if it's just because I had tried to do too much Star Trek in one day, or if this Shakespearean kind of stuff just bores the crap out of me.
Yeah, it was a lot of Shakespearean stuff. At this point, Kirk starts talking about what it is to be human. It's complex. Sometimes it's ugly from within, without, but you basically got to take the good with the bad, all that bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And then Spock is over there in the corner at the piano. First he was looking at like sheet music, and then next thing you know, he's playing the piano.
He kind of plinks around on the keyboard a little bit, like tapping out the melody. And Flint's like, well, why don't you just sit down and play the whole waltz properly? And Spock sits, and as if he's been playing his whole life,
he
begins to play. Yeah.
And Flint points out that to be human is also to seek pleasure. This is such a weird scene because he's like, here, basically offering Raina to Kirk to dance because he says, she's an accomplished dancer. So they dance. They do the waltz as Spock plays on the piano.
And during this, Flint has this like staring people down look on his face throughout.
It's so weird.
It's
so weird. This scene lasted entirely too long. So they were dancing around circles during the waltz, and there was one moment where she put her hand on the back of Kirk's neck and pulls their cheek really close. It was very intimate and very weird, strangely intimate for someone you just met.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, with Flint watching in interest, I'm like, what is this? This is so weird.
Yeah. They cut to the lab, and you can still kind of hear the piano music, so that gives us an indication of how far away they are. That was a great sound design choice. And M4 delivers 3 containers to McCoy, and he inspects them. Cut back to some more like cheek-to-cheek dancing, and then McCoy arrives just as the song is ending and announces that the Ritalin is useless because there's 1 part per 1,000 of beryllium in it, which renders it inert.
Oh, yeah. We almost forgot. Everybody on the Enterprise is going to die. What were we doing down here again?
This was another... They should have shown us a little bit of that. Every time we cut to the Enterprise, it's Scotty on the bridge and, you know...
Everybody looks fine.
Everybody looks fine, yeah. Show me some people puking or something.
Or just staggering around looking like sweaty, like they have a fever. They got a fever.
They got a fever, right.
So they can't use the antitoxin. Flint's like, oh, my bad. Too bad that wasn't detected. He'll have M4 get some more, and he'll screen it himself. And he tells McCoy, you can come with me if you want. And then he leaves. And then Kirk is checking in to see how much time that they've got. They've got like 2.5 hours. But McCoy's like, I've never seen anything like the speed of this robot that can do this stuff, because it would take them twice as long.
But Kirk points out that robot, while fast, made an error in not detecting the beryllium, which the humans may or may not have made that mistake on their own, had they been doing it. As McCoy leaves, Spock insists on telling Kirk about another strange inconsistency. That music that he was playing, the manuscript appears to have been handwritten by Johannes Brahms, except just like the painting, the song is otherwise unreleased. So Kirk's going to go to the lab to see if there's a way to remove the beryllium and save the antitoxin, but he doesn't take Spock, the science guy?
Spock, the science guy.
What does Kirk know anything about anything in the lab? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's given Spock the job of stay here, tell me when they return. Really? That's ridiculous.
Yep. In the lab, Kirk walks past all the dollar store spray bottles and around the room checking out the various panels as a captain's log plays, voicing concern that he may have made a fatal error in trusting Flint to provide the antidote. Just then, Raina comes in, and not realizing that Kirk's there, she kind of walks over to this door and looks tentative about opening it.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk makes his presence known, tells her when she left the room, it became lonely. And she's like, oh, yeah, lonely, a thirst, a flower dying in the desert. Yeah, I got that. Like, it wasn't clear if she was just repeating Merriam-Webster's dictionary or whether she truly understands the concept.
Yeah, for me, I knew like she was repeating it. Her dad had just told her that.
Her dad love her.
Her daddy.
I don't like this.
I don't know. It's weird. I don't like it. And so I feel like she was repeating it.
Yes.
And Kirk is like referring to the door that she kept staring at. He's like, what's in there? And she said, I don't know. And she's not been allowed to ever enter it. And Flint has never denied her anything, but this thing, whatever's behind that door, that's the one thing that she's not supposed to go behind.
This is Beauty and the Beast. You must never go to the west wing of the castle, or whatever he says.
What's up there?
Where? There? Oh, nothing. Absolutely nothing of interest at all in the West Wing. Dusty, dull, very boring.
Ah, so that's the West Wing.
Oh, nice going.
My guess at this point was behind door number 1, all-powerful Landru computer creating this whole environment. That was my guess at this point in the episode.
Yeah.
She says she comes down here when she's troubled, and she's troubled now but unable to speak it. Kirk asks if she's happy here with Flint, and she doesn't exactly say yes. She's like, oh, he's the kindest, greatest, wisest man in all the galaxy. Although he's the only man I'd ever met before y'all showed up. Wait, did I answer your question?
Oh, how did I get into your arms? Because that's what happened. Next thing you know, he's holding her and asking her why she's afraid and don't be afraid. And then they kiss. And
yeah, he does the chin tilt with his hand. And she kind of looks like super confused in this scene. And then he embraces her again. Suddenly, there's beeps and boops, and there's M4, who is supposed to be off collecting samples, we thought.
M4 is beeping and booping and just hovering ominously, if that's even a thing. Can you hover ominously?
It's a great question.
And sort of kind of follows Kirk around the room, just kind of threatening. And Kirk moves, it follows, and
it's like that thing you do in a fight scene when you're trying to keep the table between you.
Yeah, you circle.
Yeah.
She yells at M4 to stop. Stop, command stop, but it continues to like circle Kirk, and I couldn't tell if it's shot at Kirk or not, but all I remember seeing is next thing you know, Spock is in the room shooting M4.
My read on this was, right, so Kirk tries his heater and it doesn't work. And it looks like Kirk is about to become toast when a beam comes in from off camera and hits M4, and M4 lights up and then disappears. So
Spock has vaporized this fucking computer, and I'm like, oh no, he was gonna make the stuff, the Ritalin for him, but then he made it wrong the first time. So like, really, what good is he? But
cut back to Spock holding a heater, and he does that like spin it around your finger from the Western movies thing, and he blows it, the smoke coming from the end of it.
I guess the robot didn't detect him coming in, so it didn't disable his phasers. And then Kirk goes over to Raina, and she touches his lips with her hand and then touches her own. And Spock is just looking at them both like, what the fuck?
Back in the main room, Flint explains that this has all been one very big misunderstanding. M4 is programmed to defend the house and its members, and so it thought Kirk was attacking Raina, so it switched over into security bot mode. And Kirk's like, yeah, well, if it were around right now. And to everyone's surprise, another M4 floats into the room.
I was like,
And Flint's like, oh yeah, that thing's really, really useful. I have more. I made another one. Anyway, off to the lab.
Yeah, so they're gonna trust it to go try to make Ritalin again.
M4 leaves, but Flint warns, good thing you didn't attack me, Captain. I might have accepted the fight, and I have twice your physical strength, so I would totally kick your ass. And Kirk responds by reminding Flint of his own words. It would be an interesting test of power.
Man, they're pissing contests right here.
Flint calls Kirk childish, and he asks Raina if she would call Kirk brave or a fool. But she just says, well, I'm glad he didn't die. So maybe she's catching feelings at this point, or starting to question her current existence, maybe. Flint agrees that death, when unnecessary, is tragic. He says McCoy is in the lab with the new Ritalin, and he's satisfied with its quality. How does he know that? And if so, why doesn't McCoy just come back out to the main room if the Ritalin is done and McCoy is satisfied with it? Instead, Flint plans to go to the lab and tells everyone else to stay here where it's safe. You've seen my brings home security
You've seen
system.
my robot.
And, it doesn't always follow my orders. So at this moment, I called bullshit. He totally that's totally what he wanted to happen. That robot was not acting, out of order. So I'm on to him at this point.
As he leaves, he tells Raina to come with him, and she doesn't come right away. She's really reluctant, but she tears herself away from Kirk's arms, and they both leave. And then Kirk is like, I don't like the way he orders her around. I'm like, dude, the non-interference, like, prime directive also includes your dick, okay?
The prime directive, how often have you broken it? See, the Prime Directive has many different functions.
The Prime Directive?
It is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
It's a very interesting proposition. Let me think it over.
And Spock pretty much says that, put it back in your pants, dude.
They never made the Prime Directive argument here. That's unfortunate. I didn't even think about that, but you're right.
But Spock calls him out and he's like, since we're dependent on Flint for the Ritalin, Captain, may I respectfully suggest that you pay less attention to the young lady if you should encounter her again. Our host's interests do not appear to be confined to art and science. Spock can tell that this guy has feelings for her and it's not a father-daughterly feeling.
Anybody could tell that except for Kirk, who's blinded by his own feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kirk's like, he loves her? And Spock says, strongly indicated. And Kirk says, he loves her, but he raised her. This is really weird, Spock. And besides, didn't it seem like he wanted us to hook up? Like the billiard game where she was all over me, like teaching me how to play and the waltz.
Encouraging us to dance.
That was his idea. Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it. I get his confusion. Kirk calls up the Enterprise to get a report on the Rigelian fever.
And Scotty's report is that they've parked a whole bunch of refrigerated trucks in the parking lot at the hospital, because the president really needs to come out and say something about this, and we should take this more seriously.
Oh, no. You went there.
So Uhura reports on the Google search, there is no Mr. Flint. He has no past. This planet was purchased 30 years ago by Mr. Brack, a wealthy financier and recluse. Great to know that space capitalism in the future has wealthy people buying whole-ass planets.
Like, who the fuck do you pay? Like, who? I'm sorry. That is certainly the epitome of colonization, is you come over to, hey, this land looks unoccupied. I'm going to claim it, or I'm going to pay someone to say that it's mine. Who do you pay? Weird.
Yep. Anyway, Kirk gives a new Google search term, Raina Kapik, legal ward after the death of her parents, and he hangs up the call. Spock has been analyzing tricorder data and reports that Flint is human, but with certain biophysical peculiarities. He has a massive 16-inch cock. Oh my.
Oh my goodness. So I'm curious here why he didn't run a scan on Raina at this point, since he's so busy scanning Flint, but they didn't say shit about Raina.
And he's been scanning paintings and music, sheet music. He's scanning fucking everything.
Yeah, nothing about her though.
So these biophysical peculiarities, some of the body function readings are out of whack, starting with his age, on the order of 6,000 years.
Kirk asks Spock to confirm that, and once again, he's going to have to reprogram the computer to do it when they return to the ship, because he can't do it with his tricorder.
T-minus 2 hours, 18 minutes until they're out of time. Just as Kirk says, what the hell is keeping the processing this time? We cut back to that room with the little flat screen TV where Flint and Raina now are watching Star Trek, the original series, together. And on the screen, we see Kirk and Spock continue this conversation, assuming that the delay may be deliberate in order to keep them there. Despite Flint being apprehensive and seeming like he's a recluse that wants everybody to get off his lawn. And Spock concludes correctly that they are probably being watched.
Yep.
And at this moment, Flint gets up and turns off the TV, and Raina accuses him of sending the robot to kill Kirk. Flint denies this, of course, but come on, we're not buying it.
Yeah. And she knows, she's like, my mind could not have summoned it. I wasn't frightened. So that tells you, there's something that's connected between her and M4. She would summon it if she was in danger.
Flint's like, oh, it's just effective. We just need to run a virus scan on it. Hey, have I ever lied to you before? Come on, believe me.
And I guess she does.
Well, he asks her, what did you feel? And she's like, oh my God, that man flooded my basement.
Ooga chaka, ooga chaka, ooga, ooga, ooga chaka. I'm hooked on a feeling. Dun, 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 high and believing.
She asks if he's going to let them have their Ritalin, and he says yes, and tells her, go say your farewells.
So she doesn't really answer when he asks her what she feels.
Mm-hmm.
But I think by her question, she's concerned that they're going to make sure they get what they need.
Back in the main room, Kirk's on the phone with Scotty again. Turns out Google has nothing on Reyna Capon either. No legal records, no records at all, just like Flint. So Kirk has a lot of questions, but Spock redirects him back to the Ritalin problem.
He's trying to keep him on track. Again, he's like, I think our immediate concern is the Ritalin. Because, remember why we're here? Everybody's dying on the Enterprise.
Don't let this woman distract you from your job.
Jeez. So Kirk says, Spock, just you go on ahead to the lab. I'm going to talk to Reyna, who she's come to say goodbye. And he doesn't want to say goodbye. And like a perv, Flint is watching in the TV room, watching this exchange. And he sees Kirk kissing Reyna, and she's like starting to like kiss back.
A little voyeuristic. A little, your kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay, I guess.
Okay.
He's the cuckold, right?
Yeah, I guess. But she doesn't know. She's see, this is where it's wrong. Is she doesn't know it.
They are
she doesn't
not
know
all
she's
consenting. Yeah,
exactly. She doesn't know she's participating in this threesome.
In the other room, Flint says, "A tender last encounter, Captain Kirk, to end your usefulness." In the lab, McCoy explains to Spock how the robot just up and disappeared with the Ritalin, which Spock sees as another indicator that Flint isn't ready for them to leave just yet. And McCoy's like, "Oh, we should go tell the captain." And Spock says, "Well, the captain told us to wait here. You're not just going to stand around there, right?"
I know. Spock isn't like his obedient dog.
No.
In the living room, Kirk is like, I'm groaning so hard when he's saying this, like, come with me. I offer you happiness. Really? Like, how you just met this woman, like not even an hour ago. And now you want to have her come. He can't offer her happiness anyway, because his first love is the Enterprise.
Yep.
He knows better. So anyway, and she does put up a little bit of resistance. She's like, I've known security here. But he's like, you love me, not Flint. Really? Like, he's just being so uncharacteristically adamant. And he's like, hey, I just met you. And this is crazy. Here's my starship. Go with me, maybe. I mean,
oh
really?
My God. When he says, you love me, not Flint, she runs out of the room. Some time passes, and Kirk enters the lab where Spock has detected Ritalin behind that mysterious door that we met earlier. So heater's on full, and then the door opens by itself. So Kirk and Spock play that whole, like, I'll go, no, let me go.
I got the feeling, so Spock was really insistent to let him go alone, but Kirk, is like, no, we'll all go.
Did you think at this point that Spock knew what was behind that door?
I didn't.
And that he was trying to, like, prevent Kirk from seeing that. That's why that was his motivation for, like, no, let me.
I didn't until I thought he was really just, I don't know, being Spock and chivalrous, and that's just Spock. But I didn't until later that, okay, he's trying to protect him.
About 30 seconds later, then it clicked, and I went, oh.
I get it now.
So 30 seconds later, they're down the hallway through another door, and there's a whole other lab. And they find the jars of Ritalin sitting on a table right inside the door. But when Kirk looks further into the room, he sees what looks like a body on a bed under a yellow satin sheet, almost morgue looking. But just above the body is a small sign that reads Reyna 16.
They uncover the body, and it's a bald version of Reyna. But then there's other ones. There's Reyna 14 and there's Reyna 15. And Kirk's like, ooh, maybe I can have one.
A man comes out from an adjacent room and Kirk's like, Harcourt Fenton Mudd? I knew you had something to do with these robot women.
God damn it.
Captain's log. Ritalin in hand, they're ready to return to the Enterprise, but they've discovered Flint's secret. He's created the perfect woman, except she's not human. She's an android. So Flint arrives and explains he created her to end his centuries of loneliness. Spock brings up the paintings and the sheet music, and Flint claims he is Brahms and Da Vinci and a whole bunch of other people. Solomon, Alexander, Lazarus, Methuselah.
He's like everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. And his story is that he was born in 3834 BC on Earth, in the area that would later become Mesopotamia. He was a Kharan, a soldier, a bully, and a fool, and he was stabbed through the heart in battle, but when he didn't die, he realized he was immortal. And because
I know this was some weak sauce. Like, so I was curious about a Kharan. Is that
his name?
Is that like a thing?
Or his species?
I think it was species or people. I don't know if this is like a group of people that we've learned about in history.
A Kharan was a human born in 3834 BC in Mesopotamia on Earth. So that was his original name. But he's a human with this like power
Suddenly
to be
he's immortal.
That weak sauce. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very weak sauce.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's immortal, and then McCoy starts talking about he's got instant tissue regeneration coupled with some sort of perfect form of biological renewal.
So he would like live as one person just long enough to not blow his cover and then move on and be a totally different person somewhere else. And so that's how he's known as all of these people throughout history. The argument is he was those people throughout history.
He's married 100 times and selected, loved, and cherished.
But over and over again, then they died. And this
Right.
was a cycle of that he just had to continue living over and over again.
So he designed a woman that would be just as immortal as him.
Spock's like, I get it. Of course, you wanted a perfect ultimate woman, as brilliant, as immortal as yourself. And Kirk's like, wait, Spock, you knew? And you didn't say anything?
Would he have listened? I mean,
probably not. But Spock's like, well, I had my suspicions, but I hoped I was wrong. Flint insists that Kirk can't love an android. He loves her, and she is his handiwork, his property, his desire. But now that they know, he's not about to let them just leave.
Because he's worried now that they're going to go out and tell everyone, and then here come all the people, officials and meddlers, and then his privacy is gone and his solitude is gone.
Spock's like, oh, you can trust us. We can keep a secret. But Flint can't take that chance. This episode reminded me a bit of, there's a Next Gen episode, season 1 or 2, I think, where they encounter an alien species that wished to be hidden and cause an effect, maybe? No, that's not it. Anyway, and so they wiped their memories and moved the Enterprise back to the clues, I believe. They moved the Enterprise back to the beginning of the episode, and, every time they went past this alien species, they were like, oh, I'm getting some weird readings. We should go check that out. And then they had to reset and do it again and reset and do it again because these aliens did not want to be known. And I think it was that Data was seeing 3s everywhere or something. And that finally was
This sounds familiar.
That
now.
told him to choose the third option that they were given when they encountered this phenomena. And so third option would make it so that they didn't run into those aliens at all.
Oh man, I can't wait to get the
cycle.
TNG.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
First of all, I think I've smoked too much weed in my life to where I can't remember shit. Like, I love it when people rattle off episode names and stuff, and I'm like, I really want to be able to do that, but my brain just can't retain it. But anyway,
that's what this alien kind of reminded me of. So Kirk tries to call up the Enterprise, but Flint has this little Tamagotchi looking thing in his hand, this little control panel.
Oh my God.
And he pushes a button and the Enterprise disappears from space, only to reappear as a model on a table nearby. This was some fun Honey, I Shrunk the Starship shit right here.
Totally. Totally. Kirk is like, my crew, you know.
He bends down and gets like a real close look at the Enterprise, and from inside the Enterprise bridge, we see Kirk real big on the screen. Oh, that was great.
But luckily, the people inside, they're all miniatures. They aren't moving, so they're not dead. And Flint says, you know, this is a test of power. I didn't kill them, but I did put them in like a suspended state.
This test of power shit just keeps coming back. So Kirk tries to like bargain and beg. Being frozen is a fate worse than death. And Flint's like, well, you know, I'll unfreeze them in 1,000 years into the future or so for some reason. Like, because even if they unfroze them 2,000 years later, they could still run tell that about this guy, right? Like, what's the point of freezing them for thousands of years? McCoy even holds up the mirror of cruelty. He's like, you know, you sure talk a lot of shit about humanity being barbaric and cruel, but you're doing this to us? Who's the barbaric, cruel person now? Flint's like, I have needs.
Oh my.
And those needs are basically about to happen. It's something he's been waiting for a long time, and that was for Raina to actually start to show some emotion. And now that it's happening, it's all because of Kirk, but she's stirred to life.
Yeah, Raina's sexual awakening is absolutely thanks to Kirk, but he's going to just bottle Kirk up in the little genie bottle on the table with the others, and Raina is just going to turn to him now. So speaking of Raina, she just found her way into this room and heard a whole bunch of that conversation they just had, and she tells Flint to stop. Spock asks her what she will feel after they're gone. And McCoy points out that it's not just love and lust in the quiver of human emotion. If you destroy us, she'll hate you forever. She got all the emotions, not just the one you wanted her to have. So Flint releases the Enterprise on Kirk's promise to keep quiet about it. But then Kirk accuses Flint of setting this whole thing up, using him, keeping him and Raina together to unlock her emotions, and then push Kirk aside so that he can swoop in and take over.
And Flint says, well, I'm going to, just as those barbarians he's accusing them of being, he's like, I'm going to take what's mine. Star Trek fight! Finally! We haven't had one in a really long time.
We haven't had one in a while, no.
He's going to take what's his because they're mated, and he's basically going to kick Kirk's ass.
This fight unlocks another emotion in Raina. She's like, I refuse to be the cause of this fight, and then demands her autonomy. And I thought this was a great moment for her, not a great look for Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
Because he and Flint are both arguing from the position of ownership. Like, she's my woman, right?
And granted, Kirk comes in thinking he's the savior of the day. But to be honest, he wants some sort of, not ownership, but some sort of control over her as well.
So she asserts her independence and refuses to take any more orders. And Spock's like, guys, you should probably stop this. But they continue. Kirk explains this is no longer a test of power. She's free. She belongs only to herself and has free will. And Flint's like, well, that is kind of what I was working towards, I guess. But as they each beg her to choose between them, the sudden opening of this emotional floodgate causes Raina to collapse to the ground.
Oh my God! They've killed
Raina.
You bastards!
And Flint's like, you can't die, but Kirk's like, oh, yes, she can. Because she basically died because the agony destroyed her. The agony of love and not bearing to be able to hurt either one of them. And she just died.
What did you think of Spock being the vessel to speak this humanity in this moment?
I think it was perfect because a lot of time we can't see it if we're human and we're all up in within the emotion. It always takes someone on the outside to tell us the truth.
Yep.
And it was really poetic the way that he said it. The joys of love made her human, and the agonies of love destroyed her.
Yeah. Spock enters Kirk's quarters to find a very sullen Kirk. Spock reports on the illness, and then Kirk says, a very old and lonely man. and a young and lonely man. We put on a pretty poor show, didn't we? And
he is like broken.
Yeah.
Like, really broken.
Yeah. So he kind of like leans forward and lays his head in his hands and says, "If only I could forget." And then McCoy rocks in like, "Woo, time for chair chat." And Spock's like, "Shh, shh, shh. He's sleeping."
He's like, "Oh, he's sleeping.
He's sleeping.
Sorry.
Quiet."
Sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. But then Spock asks him for his report, and he gives the report on Mr. Flint's condition. He's dying. In leaving Earth with all of its complex fields where he was actually formed, he's sacrificing immortality because he's moved somewhere else. And even though it's basically time for him to die, he's in a different environment. He'll live out the remainder of his normal life, and then he'll die.
And he's decided to dedicate what's left of his life to the improvement of the human condition. And then we never hear from him again.
What does that mean, though? What is the improvement of the human condition? Of his human condition?
Maybe. He needs one.
I don't know.
He needs a human condition adjustment. McCoy goes on another anti-Vulcan screed. Well, I guess that's it. I can tell Jim later, or you can. Considering his opponent's longevity, truly an eternal triangle. You wouldn't understand that, would you, Spock? You see, I feel sorrier for you than I do him, because you'll never know the things that love can drive a man to do. Your Honor, I would like to submit into evidence the Star Trek The Original Series episode Amok Time, where Spock goes through Pon farr as evidence. Hello?
Shut the fuck up, McCoy.
Yeah. They say goodnight to each other, and McCoy leaves the room saying, "I do wish he could forget her." And the surprise twist here at the end that I did not see coming, Spock goes over to the sleeping Kirk, leans down, puts his hand on Kirk's face, and whispers, "Forget."
And that is the most empathetic thing that I've seen any of them do. And McCoy can go fuck himself about understanding and feeling and being human. He can just fuck off.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'm happy the affair is over.
Me too.
A most annoying, emotional episode.
Yeah, but I learned something today.
When dreams become more important than reality, you give up travel, building, creating.
One jealous god, if all this makes a god.
By sparing your helpless enemy, who surely would have destroyed you, you demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy.
Frankly, I was rather dismayed by your use of the term half-breed. You must admit, it is an unsophisticated expression.
I will push back on that moment only to the extent that Spock violated Kirk's consent.
Oh, god damn it. You're right.
So he was trying to do a nice emotional thing, for his friend, but also like, "Hey,
Taking
Captain Kirk,
memories.
I would like to be able to help you forget this. Is that okay?" Is the thing he should have said.
Oh man, you're right. Here I am thinking he's being empathetic because Spock usually
I think he was.
Yeah.
I just think he skipped the consent step. That's all.
That's true. You're right.
Not as if skipping the consent step is just a nothing burger. That's how it sounded when I said it, but that's not what I meant.
No.
Anyway, what else you got?
I mean, obviously the my body, my choice kind of thing. That body autonomy. Poor Raina. I mean, she didn't ask to be made, and it's funny
Isn't
how
that true of all of us, though?
Well, it's funny how us humans, like these humans in Star Trek, they make these robots, and they want them to do a certain thing or be a certain way, and then when they are, it's never how they imagine, and then they get upset. I wanted you to feel, but I wanted you to feel for me.
Yeah, kind of a be careful what you wish for
Mm-hmm.
thing happening there. A lot of talk about the barbarism of humanity. Star Trek does make a lot about, whether present or historical, how barbaric humans can be.
Yeah, but also I think they make a good point of while Flint is accusing and he recognizes that they're barbaric. He is also barbaric.
Yes.
He recognizes it in humans because it's part of him too. Like, you know what I mean? He was so quick to say, I want to get away from this, but it's so much, very much ingrained in him as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that is core to the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to go back to the beginning. So the setup is this. We rolled up to this guy's house, knocked on the door.
Not even knocked.
Where, right, trespassed on his lawn, where we have Raina, who was an infant, whose parents died and was awarded custody to Flint, who raised her from child to then love her romantically, which is weird and gross. But if it's not a person, it's a real doll. What the fuck is this episode, Allie?
I don't know. It's some Alabama shit. It's some. I don't know.
If I were gonna make a real doll, a fuck doll android, I wouldn't give it the backstory that I'd raised it from a child. This man made up the backstory to this android he created to fuck, that she was kind of his child.
Yeah.
What is this?
Weird.
Yeah.
Sauce. Weird sauce, weak sauce, whatever you want to call it, sauce. Uncomfortable sauce. I don't know.
And then, of course, I guess the episode theme buried in the title, Requiem for Methuselah. Methuselah being the biblical character who was like the oldest living person or whatever, right?
Yeah. But I mean, other than that, did it have anything? Well, he was Methuselah at one point, but it could have been like Requiem to Da Vinci at this point. I mean, he was all of them.
He was all of those people. I think, though, it's just saying specifically Methuselah because, he overstayed his welcome. If he was Methuselah, right, and he was written about as having lived this incredibly unrealistically long life, that blew his cover a little bit. And so then he had to go change his name again and be somebody else. And the Requiem for Methuselah is that he is dying. That, this long-lived person is now finally seeing the end.
Yeah.
Speaking of the end, let's get to the end of this episode. Did anybody die?
Thor died in this episode. Wrote a rhyme about it. Want to hear it? Here it goes.
Oh, God.
It's dead, Jim.
We are assembled here today to pay final respects to our honored dead.
3 crewmen succumbed to Rigelian fever, and we never knew their names. To acquire Rytalon, they were eager, but Kirk ended up a pawn in Flint's games. And Captain Kirk fell hard for Raina, the beauty of the week, as Spock played the piano and they danced cheek to cheek. But in the end, it was not to be, for Raina was an android. She loved them both and could not deal, so she herself destroyed.
Ooh. Oh, that was good. And now I have stuck in my head.
And we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek.
Oh.
I was big into like lounge jazz for a hot minute.
Cool. Hey, that's good. The swing. That's still good music.
Yeah.
Let's get right to business.
Fine, I'm authorized to pay an equitable price. Federation has invested a great deal of money in our training. They're about due for a small return.
Listen, we pay off percentages. We're entitled to a little service for our money, huh?
Is this the way your citizens do business? Their right of petition?
They pay their percentages and the boss takes care of them.
Is there anything else?
All right, then we want to take a moment to thank all of our patrons and everyone who supports the show, but we especially want to thank our founding admirals. Special thanks to Russell, Allie, Peter, Sarah, and Sherry. And now here's Allie or I doing a silly Star Trek character to tell you more about it.
Kapla, warriors of the cosmos. Listen well.
If you find Humanist Trek to be a worthy battle companion, prove your mettle. Leave a review like a victorious roar echoing through the halls of Stovokor. But for those with the heart of a true Klingon, ascend to greatness by becoming a patron. Pledge your support and earn the respect of warriors across the galaxy. Earn early access, battle-worthy merch, and bonus content that'll make your blood boil hotter than Klingon coffee. Visit patreon.com/humanisttrek and pledge a meager $3 per moon cycle. It's the honorable thing to do. And let it be known throughout the Empire that you have helped fuel the laughter heard from Kronos to the far reaches of Grethor. Ha!
I assume you're loitering around here to learn what efficiency rating I plan to give your cadets.
Trainees, to the briefing room. Is that all you gotta say? What about my performance?
Aren't you dead?
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities. There was no way to win.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I am understandably curious.
May I ask you a question?
Who's been holding up the damn elevator?
All right, Becca is back now with the exciting conclusion to the Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge. Last time on Humanist Trek, you asked us...
It wouldn't be low-budget original Trek without some prop recycling. The undercarriage of Flint's robot M4 is a reused portion of what from which previous episode?
All right, so we both said Nomad, and I think, and in the discussion of the episode, we
pretty, yeah.
Yeah,
it's gotta be Nomad.
It's gotta be, is it?
It is a portion from the upper carriage of Nomad from the Changeling.
Correct.
Hell yeah. On the next Humanist Trek, we'll be reviewing Season 3, Episode 20, The Way to Eden. A charismatic leader and his followers hijack the Enterprise in their search for Eden. Are you a Herbert? That's this episode, right? This is the Herberts episode. You remember this? No, you don't remember? Okay. Becca, what's our question?
Walter Koenig was highly critical of the writing of this episode.
Okay.
What was one of his main objections?
Was this... You said that they were...
There's like a band of hippies come on the Enterprise, and they take it over in search of Eden. Yeah. So Chekhov is Russian.
I was gonna say, did they disparage the Russians? Because
the whole goddamn show disparaged the Russians with Chekhov. Chekhov's misappropriated Russian tales.
Well, no. I mean, so hippies. You think 1960s?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think he didn't like the negative portrayal of the hippie, free love, whatever movement.
Yeah, because they were typically against war, and then if you're against war and everything that was going on at that time, they're probably against the Russians and probably the Germans too. But
that's my answer. I think I'm going to go there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, are you writing our answers down over there? You should be, because I'm not.
Sort of.
All right. Well, if you'd like to play along, you know how to do that. Head over to your social media, share this episode with the hashtag Starfleet Challenge and your answer, and we will pick out our favorite to be the winner. Next time on Humanist Trek, Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 20, The Way to Eden.
Diftor Smoothma.
Kapla.
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcasts. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.